Consider hearing this film pitch. Okay, so we're gonna have BMX bikes, an angry old man, slow motion, soft lit prom dances, a villain named Bart, 40-year-olds playing high school students. Any studio exec in the 80s would surely say, well, yeah, let's make that. Welcome to Popcorn and Vinyl, the show dedicated to films, film score, and vinyl. And today we are talking about the 1986 film RAD. Now, I don't know how popular this film is. All I know is that it would play occasionally on TV on Saturday afternoons in the 90s. And this film heavily inspired my youth. It inspired me to make a little number sign for the front of my crappy BMX bike and attempt moderately dangerous tricks well before the whole X Games Tony Hawk era. It also had a soundtrack of songs that I would be humming for the next few years, but could never remember. Fast forward 30 plus years and I stumbled upon a new vinyl release of what I think is a cult classic. This appears to be an unofficial release, which I'm not exactly sure what the definition of that is. Does that mean that it's technically a bootleg? I'm not sure. I've always been curious about how bootlegs work. How does someone create a fairly sizable run of an album and distribute it without getting into any trouble? If anyone has any inside knowledge, I would love to hear about it in the comments. This unofficial release has the classic pixelated artwork that I've seen for years on various media. I'm not sure if the pixelated look is an intentional artistic choice to create sort of a digitized look, or if the work has just been blown up from poor source files over the years. It is pressed onto orange, slightly marbled vinyl and really does pop visually. I don't think, however, that the pressing sounds very good. It's flat, it's tinny, and doesn't have a lot of dynamics to it. It sounds like when you rip a YouTube video to MP3, which might in fact be what the source files are for this. I'm not sure if there are any good source tracks for these songs even available. I'm also not sure what the appetite for this soundtrack is. Is it big enough to merit a remaster of some kind, or is this kind of release, will that fit all those people that wanted the soundtrack? Going through my first full listen, I was sort of disappointed by what I considered to be all the filler tracks, noting that there are only 9 tracks in total. Those hits I remember, such as Break the Ice and Thunder in Your Heart, really stole the show, and I wasn't really impressed with the rest. The film starts so strong with Break the Ice and a nice little montage of BMX bike tricks and stunts performed by not characters in the film, but that was just an appetizer to get us into this culture of BMX bikes at the time. Those numerous filler tracks, as I sort of proceed at the time, I didn't really remember from the film, and I really wished I could skip tracks easily at that time. But with each subsequent listen, I liked those tracks more and more. They really are a perfect collection of 80s tunes and make this film and the soundtrack a true cultural time capsule. And it made me reflect on on the current film soundtracks and something that made the 80s so unique. I don't think there is a decade in film where the songs used in the film prominently feature the music of the film from that time. If you think about popular compilation soundtrack albums from the last few decades, they're mostly retro songs from the past that use nostalgia to create a certain atmosphere for the film or scene, or to highlight a part of the character's life or personality. Consider one of the most popular soundtracks in recent years is the Guardians of the Galaxy Awesome Mix. They're all older songs, and that's explained obviously in the context of the film where the character was taken off the planet in the 80s. But the film still chooses to use those 80s tracks throughout the film. It doesn't have to, as songs used in films don't have to be from, that character's world necessarily, but they made that deliberate choice. It's an interesting evolution of how film music is used in films. You still saw those compilation albums throughout the 90s fairly regularly, but it really tapered off in the early 2000s. And it didn't quite have the same sort of decade stamp as it did the 80s. Perhaps more filmmakers preferred original scores for greater emotional impact, or to try to maybe lessen the aging factor for a film, as using contemporary songs sort of puts a musical or a timestamp on films. And that could be good or bad depending on the intention of the filmmakers. Circling back to RAD, I feel like this is a bit of a cult classic, and it's almost a textbook recipe card for the perfect 80s movie. The filmmakers clearly chose popular songs and styles of the decade to give the film its emotional structure, probably without thinking too much about its long-term effect. So should you pick up this vinyl release? Probably not, to be honest. Unless you have nostalgic feelings towards this movie and really just kind of want a piece of it. Music quality, it's not great. And I'm sure any streaming copy is as good or better. If you want just a fun 80s record to listen to without having high expectations for sonic quality, then this will surely satisfy those 80s urges. Leaving you with a question of the day: are you okay with unofficial releases, even if they don't sound great? Just so you get something, some kind of release that you've always wanted. It just happens to be some random unofficial bootleg release. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Please do give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you wish to see more soundtrack reviews in the future. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.